The kettle was the loudest thing in the house, which is how I heard her. I had come down to make a second cup of chamomile because I could not sleep. It was 11:14 on a Tuesday night in late October, and I had spent the day with my daughter Adrian and her husband Jules going over the documents. One final time, the documents that would. On Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, in a notary's office on Elm Street, transfer durable power of attorney over my finances and my medical decisions to my only child. I was 74 years old. Adrian was 48. We had been close once. Not lately, exactly, but close enough that signing the papers had felt like something I owed her for being the daughter I had, even when she stopped being the daughter I remembered. I had filled the kettle and turned it on and walked to the window to look at the maple in the front yard. That was when I heard her. Adrian and Jules were in the den. The den door was halfway closed, but not all the way doors get when people forget they aren't alone in a house. Their voices were soft. Hers carried better than his. She had always had that voice, the kind that travels. "Jules, it's fine. She's tired. She'll be easier to handle once the papers are signed." I stood very still in front of my own kitchen window. The kettle began to whistle. I reached for it slowly, the way a person reaches for a switch in the dark when they suddenly realize they are not alone in the room. I lifted the kettle off the burner. The whistle stopped. The house went silent in a way I had not heard silence in years. In the den, Jules said something I could not hear. Adrian answered, I know, but the doctor said the next time it happens, we should already have the paperwork in place. We don't want to be scrambling. And honestly, after Thursday, we can finally just manage the situation properly. The house, the accounts, the move, all of it. Manage the situation. The move. I had not, to my recollection, agreed to a move. I had not, to my recollection, been told there was going to be one. I put the kettle down on the cold burner. I did not pour the water. I did not breathe loudly. I walked, in my slippers, very softly, back across the kitchen and up the carpeted stairs to my bedroom. I closed the door. I locked it. I did not cry. My hands didn't tremble. I sat on the edge of my bed in my robe at 11:18 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October, and I let myself understand what I had just heard. The papers I was scheduled to sign on Thursday morning gave my daughter the legal authority to manage my finances and to make medical decisions on my behalf if I became incapacitated. They were standard. Adrian had brought them in a folder from a lawyer she had selected herself. Jules had reviewed them. They were boilerplate. Mom, every family does this once you hit 75. I was not 75. I was 74. They had moved up the timeline by 8 months, and I had not asked why. I had not asked why, because Adrian had said, Mum, we just want it in place before anything happens, like with Aunt Wendy. Aunt Wendy had died of a stroke last spring. The reference had landed exactly where Adrian had aimed it. I had cried 3 weeks ago in Adrian's kitchen about how I missed Wendy. I had said the sentence Adrian had been waiting for, which was, maybe you and Jules should be the ones who handle things if something happens. Adrian had said, Oh, Mom, only if you want us to. I had said yes. I had said it with relief. I sat on the edge of my bed, and I let myself remember the last 6 months. The day Adrian had called and said the cardiologist had recommended I stop driving at night. I had not seen a cardiologist. I had seen my regular GP, who had said my blood pressure was fine, and my heart was, in his words, the heart of a woman 15 years younger. When I had pointed this out, Adrian had said, Mom, I called Dr. Holyfield directly. He told me he was being polite to you because you got upset. He told me privately that you really shouldn't be driving at night anymore. I had not driven at night since. The afternoon, she had taken my checkbook home with her to balance it for me because I had seemed confused about a deposit. I had not seemed confused. I had asked her, in conversation, what the difference was between a wire and an ACH transfer, because I genuinely did not know, and she had decided that this was a sign. The week she had insisted on coming with me to the dermatologist for a minor mole removal, and had spent the entire appointment explaining things to the doctor on my behalf, including answering questions the doctor had directed at me. The Sunday lunch where Jules had said, gently, "Helen, have you thought about how much house you really need now? You know, going forward." And Adrian had said quickly, "Jules, not yet." She had said, "Not yet." She had said, "Not yet," like a woman who had already booked the meeting on a different calendar. I sat on the edge of my bed, and I put my hand on my chest, not because anything hurt, but because I wanted to feel my own heart beating. And I wanted to know which of us was telling the truth, the doctor who had called it the heart of a woman 15 years younger, or my daughter, who had been quietly arranging for it to be a little less mine. The heart was steady. The heart was strong. The kettle was on the cold burner downstairs. The papers were on the dining room table in a manila folder. I had 36 hours. I got up at 6:14 a.m. on Wednesday. I dressed before Adrian and Jules came downstairs. They were staying in the guest room because Adrian had insisted on being here for emotional support before the signing. I wore a navy skirt and the cream blouse with the pearl buttons that my late husband Russell had bought me at a department store in Boston in 1989. I put on my pearl earrings. I made coffee. When Adrian came into the kitchen at 7:30, I was sitting at the table with the manila folder open in front of me, reading the documents, the way I had not read them the first 3 times. "Morning, Mom." "Morning, sweetheart." "You're up early." "I am. I thought I'd give the paperwork one more look before tomorrow." She paused at the coffee pot. "Mom, you don't have to. Jules and I went over everything. It's standard." "I know, sweetheart. I just like to read things." She poured her coffee. She watched me from across the kitchen island, and I watched her in the small reflection of the window glass without lifting my eyes from the page. Her face went through 3 small expressions in 4 seconds. The third one was the one a woman makes when she is calculating. "Anything you don't understand?" she said. "I can call Marcus." Marcus was her lawyer, the one she had selected. "No, sweetheart. I think I understand it just fine." I closed the folder. I smiled at her. I stood up. "I'm going to go for a little walk before breakfast. The leaves are nice this morning." "Mom, it's cold out." "It is. I'll bundle up." I walked out the front door at 7:43 with my coat on, my purse under my arm, and the manila folder slid into a tote bag I had owned since 1996. I walked 4 blocks to the corner where my neighbor, Rosalind, who had been my friend since 1988 and who was a retired probate judge, was already drinking her coffee on her porch in a plaid blanket. Rosalind looked at my tote bag. She looked at my face. "Helen, sit down." I sat. I told her, in order, what I had heard the night before, what I had been ignoring for 6 months, and what was scheduled to happen at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. Rosalind listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, very quietly, "Helen, give me the folder." I gave her the folder. She read for 9 minutes. She turned pages slowly, the way a judge turns pages. Her eyebrows lifted twice. The second time, she said one word, which was, "Ah." "Ah, what?" "Helen, page 7, section 4B. Did your daughter walk you through this clause?" She said it was the standard incapacity clause. "It is not the standard incapacity clause. The standard clause requires 2 independent physician evaluations to trigger durable POA. This one requires 1 physician evaluation, or the agent's written attestation of observed cognitive decline. The agent, Helen, would be Adrian. She would be allowed to declare you incapacitated by writing a letter." I sat very still on Rosalind's porch. "Rosalind." "Yes." "Is that legal?" "It is barely legal. It is the kind of clause a particular sort of lawyer drafts when a particular sort of family member is paying him. It would not survive a serious challenge in court, but it would not need to. Once the paperwork is filed, by the time you challenged it, you would already be in a facility with limited access to your own bank accounts and a daughter making decisions on your behalf. How long would that take? 3 days, maybe 4. I put my coffee cup down on Rosalind's porch table. What do I do? Rosalind folded the folder closed. She handed it back to me. Helen, you go home. You eat breakfast with your daughter. You smile. You tell her you are looking forward to tomorrow. You do not let her know you have read this carefully. Then you come back here at 1 o'clock and we are going to make some phone calls. Rosalind. Yes. Thank you. She reached over and squeezed my wrist. Her hand was warm. The plaid blanket smelled of cedar. Helen, I have been waiting 15 years for you to come over and tell me something like this. I am sorry it took this long, but I am very glad you came this morning. I went home. I made eggs. I asked Adrian about her flowers. I asked Jules about his work. I told them the leaves were lovely. I poured Adrian a second cup of coffee. I let her pour me one. I smiled at the right places. At 12:50, I told them I was going to lie down for a bit and then run an errand, and I left the house at 12:58 with my purse and the tote bag. By 1:09, I was back on Rosalind's porch. We worked for 3.5 hours. Rosalind called a colleague of hers, a probate attorney named Theodora Vance, semi-retired, who took the call because Rosalind had once written a recommendation that got Theodora's nephew into law school. Theodora drove to Rosalind's house at 2:30 p.m. with a leather briefcase and a thermos of black tea. The three of us sat at Rosalind's dining room table. We drafted 3 documents. The first was a clean, standard, durable power of attorney, the kind Adrian had pretended to bring me. 2 physicians required. Standard incapacity language. The agent named was not Adrian. The agent named was a professional fiduciary firm Theodora had worked with for 26 years. The second was a revised will. Adrian was not removed from it. She remained a beneficiary, though her share was reduced and placed in a trust she could not access until she was 60. The bulk of the estate was redirected to 2 places: a trust for my granddaughter, Evangeline, age 15, who would receive it at 25, and a charitable bequest to a small organization called House on Mercer Street, which provided legal aid to elderly people facing financial exploitation by family members. I had not heard of House on Mercer Street before that afternoon. Theodora had recommended it. Rosalind had nodded. They take in women just like you, Helen, quietly. They don't make the news. They just keep widows in their own houses. I wrote the bequest down on a piece of yellow legal pad in my own hand. To House on Mercer Street, in honor of every woman who almost signed. The third document was a notarized statement, witnessed by Rosalind and Theodora, describing exactly what I had overheard the night before, with timestamps, and naming the specific clause Adrian's lawyer had inserted into the original POA. By 5:15, every page was signed. Theodora notarized them at Rosalind's table with the small black stamp she had been using since 1991. Helen, Theodora said, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, when your daughter takes you to that notary's office, you are going to walk in with me. I will be 5 minutes behind you. I will introduce myself as your attorney. I will hand the notary a copy of the document I just notarized, and I will hand your daughter a copy of the new POA you executed today, naming a fiduciary firm. Then I will explain to her, in language she will understand, that the original signing is cancelled, that any attempt to file the previous document constitutes attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult under state law, and that we are prepared to file a report if she does not vacate your home by Sunday at noon. I looked across the table at this woman I had met 2.5 hours earlier, Theodora. Yes. You do this often. She smiled, just slightly. I do this more often than you would believe, Helen. I have done it for 41 years. I have done it for women who waited too long, and I have done it for women who came to me the morning after they heard the kettle whistle. The morning after women always do better. I went home at 6. I made dinner a roast chicken, the way Russell had liked it, with rosemary and lemon. Adrian and Jules came down from the guest room and sat at the table. We drank wine. Adrian told a story about her boss. Jules made a small joke. I laughed at the right places. At 9:30, I told them I was going to bed early because of the long day tomorrow. Of course, Mom, Adrian said. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Mom. She did not look at me when she said it. She was looking at her phone. I went upstairs. I locked my door. I lay in my bed with the lamp off, and I listened to the house, and I thought about the kettle. I did not sleep. I did not need to. At 9:51 the next morning, Adrian, Jules, and I drove to the notary's office on Elm Street. The lobby smelled of carpet cleaner and printer toner. The notary's name was Andrea something. She had a small bowl of mints on her desk. The folder was on the table between us. At 9:57, the door opened, and Theodora Vance walked in carrying her leather briefcase. Adrian looked up. Confusion crossed her face first. Then, irritation. Then, and I watched this carefully because I will remember it for the rest of my life, recognition. She did not know Theodora personally, but she knew what kind of woman Theodora was, the way one careful woman knows another at 15 paces. I'm sorry, Adrian said. Are you in the wrong office? No, Theodora said pleasantly. I'm Helen Westcott's attorney, Theodora Vance. May I sit? Adrian stared at me. Mom? This is Theodora, sweetheart. She's been helping me with some paperwork. Mom, Marcus is the lawyer. We talked about this. Marcus is your lawyer, Adrian. Theodora is mine. The room went quiet. Andrea, the notary, put her hands in her lap. Theodora opened her briefcase. She placed 3 documents on the table in front of Adrian. She slid them across with 2 fingers. Mrs. Crewe, the first document is your mother's revised power of attorney, executed yesterday afternoon at 4:11 p.m. and notarized at 4:52. You are not the agent. The agent is a professional fiduciary firm. The second document is your mother's revised will, also executed yesterday. The third document is a notarized affidavit by your mother, describing what she overheard at her own kitchen window at 11:14 p.m. on Tuesday night, including your statement. Quote, she'll be easier to handle once the papers are signed, and a citation of the specific clause your attorney included in the document you brought to her, which deviates substantially from standard durable POA language. Adrian's mouth opened, her mouth closed. Jules said quietly, Adrian. Mom. Adrian, I said, I'd like you to listen to Theodora finish. Theodora continued, calmly. We are not, at this time, filing a report with Adult Protective Services. We are also not, at this time, pursuing civil action against you or your attorney. We are willing to refrain from both, provided that you and your husband vacate your mother's home by noon on Sunday, return all keys, return your mother's checkbook which you have been holding since June, and refrain from any contact with her financial institutions, healthcare providers, or attorneys going forward. Do you understand? Adrian did not answer. Mrs. Crewe, do you understand? I understand. Wonderful. The cancellation of today's signing has already been communicated to Andrea. She will not be notarizing anything today. Andrea, the notary, nodded. Her hands were still in her lap. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I looked at my daughter across the table. Adrian. Mom. I want you to know something. I am still your mother. I will always be your mother. I love you, and I want you to think very carefully in the years ahead about the fact that the night you said what you said it with the kitchen door half open. I think a part of you wanted me to hear it. I think a part of you wanted to be stopped. I am stopping you. I hope someday that part of you is grateful. She did not cry. Her face went the blotchy colour. A woman's face goes when she is not used to being described accurately. I walked out of the notary's office with Theodora behind me. The morning air was cold. I was wearing the cream blouse with the pearl buttons that Russell had bought me in 1989. The pearl earrings, the navy skirt. Theodora put her hand on my shoulder. Helen, you did beautifully. Theodora. Yes. My kettle is still on the cold burner from Tuesday night. I have not turned it back on since. She smiled. Then go home, Helen, and make yourself a cup of tea. Adrian and Jules vacated the house by 10:40 on Sunday morning. They left the keys on the kitchen counter. They did not say goodbye. The first voicemail came on Tuesday afternoon, almost exactly a week after the kettle. Mom, it's Adrian. I don't know what to say. I have been thinking about what you said, about the door being half open. I have been thinking about it for 6 days. I think you might be right. I think I lost track of who I was talking about. I'm sorry, I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I am sitting with what I did, and I am not pretending it was something else. I'll wait for you to call me, if you ever do. I listened to it 3 times. Then I put it in a folder on my computer labeled "To be considered." I did not call her back. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. Maybe eventually. Some apologies need to sit in a drawer for a long time before they become anything else. That is not cruelty. That is honesty, with a handle. That night, my granddaughter Evangeline FaceTimed me from her bedroom. She was 15. She had her mother's eyes and her grandfather Russell's mouth. Grandma, Mum told me what happened. What did she tell you, sweetheart? That she did something really bad and that you stopped her, and that she's trying to figure out how to be a different person now. I closed my eyes. That sounds about right. Grandma, are you okay? I am, sweetheart. I really am. Can I come visit you on Saturday? You can come any Saturday for the rest of your life, Evangeline. Through the front door, on your own time, without your mother, as long as you want. Okay, Grandma. Okay, sweet pea. That night, I sat at my kitchen window with a fresh cup of chamomile tea made on the kettle I had finally turned back on. I wrote one line in the small notebook I had started keeping the morning after the half-open door. She said I would be easier to handle, so I made myself impossible to handle, by women who would not have heard the kettle in time. Then I closed the notebook, and I drank my tea, and I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has finally heard her own kettle whistle and listened to it, and walked back up the stairs in her own house, alone and wide awake, in time to save her own life.